Great. It looks like we've got some attendees on the line, so I will kick us off. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I am Leanne, and I am the Alumni Relations contact for the West Coast. And so today our presentation is presented by the San Francisco Bay Area Club, and this is the impact of COVID-19 on companies, businesses, and the economy. We have several guests with us today, but before we go through introductions of our panelists, we have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to run through with everyone. This format is a Zoom webinar, so if this is your first rodeo, everyone on the line is muted and your video is hidden upon entry, except for the panelists and the hosts, of course. Your questions are incredibly valuable to us, and that is the way that we can be interactive with you all as our valued participants today. So please use the Q&A. As you can see the Q&A field, if you are familiar, down at the bottom, you should have sort of a panel of choices there. You can see the Q&A option. That is truly the best option because it will filter the questions to our moderator, and then he will be able to ask either during the presentation or after during the Q&A. So feel free to use this tool at any time during the webinar as the questions hit you. Go ahead and place them in the Q&A. Next slide. Great. This is the agenda for today. We obviously are covering opening remarks now. Then we'll do some introductions. There will be the panel discussion, Q&A, and closing remarks. Feel free to, again, ask questions at any time. And should you need to pop off, we won't be able to say goodbye to you, but we hope that we entertained you while you were with us. And I guess with that, I will turn it over to our club president of the Bay Area Alumni Club, AJ Manglani. Thank you so much for pulling this panel together today. And after you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Leanne. Can everyone hear me okay, assuming? Can you?
Yes.
Excellent. So first of all, everyone, thank you so much for joining today. It is always such a pleasure to see our booth community come together, especially in times like this. So I want to start by mentioning that I hope you, your families, and your loved ones are staying safe, healthy, and have been working in this new way and trying to adjust to this new way of life. So hope everybody is doing well and working great on that one. With that said, I want to welcome you to our very first virtual series of the events that we are starting. You know, it's very interesting that at the beginning of the year, we in our club generally decide or strategize what type of activities and programs that the club wants to really engage with, what type of people we want to go and talk to. And we had our great ideas and plans, and we were starting to talk to a lot of people to get a volunteer and club engagement. And guess what happens? COVID situation. So now we are in this new way of operating where we are meeting everything virtually. But at the same time, I'm delighted that we are able to bring our community together even virtually. So I want to take a very quick minute here talking about briefly what our club, Alumni Club here is. So at the end of the day, we are a group of volunteers with a single goal and purpose in mind that we want to keep our community of Chicago booth alums engaged through quality programming, through the events, discussions, topics, and engagement that at the end of the day benefit mutually to everybody here, right? And this is our attempt. Who you see on the screen are our existing board members. At the beginning of the year, some of you may have gotten the email newsletter announcement that we had a new board. We had a phenomenal leadership from our previous board, Lee and other board members. And this year we started a new board, and these are the people who are leading and driving some of the activity. Having said that, we are still looking, as always, more volunteer, more participants, and board members. So if you want to get engaged throughout any time, please reach out to myself or Leanne. There is a contact information at the end. I already covered the club mission, but I do actually want to call out that we have an amazing group of 3,000 plus alumni here in the Bay Area. That is a tremendous strength. Our strength lies not just from the scale, but also from the diversity. We have people of different origin, ethnicity, race, gender, and in different industries and different functions. Needless to say that we are Chicago booth, right? So you can all continue to stay engaged with us. With that said, I would like to move our attention to our event today. You know, when we were thinking about what should be our first topic of engagement through this time, it was very obvious. It should be the impact of COVID on our lives, on our businesses, on our communities, period. And then when we had that idea, we were looking for an esteemed alumni group who can bring in that diverse perspective from their level of responsibilities, from their industries, and from their functions where they operate, and provide us their insights about how they are seeing this pandemic impacting everything on the ground. And I'm very pleased to introduce you to our esteemed panel list here overall. We have Bruce Parton, we have Justin Martin, Bharat Kapoor, and Gurinder Dillo. So I'm going to pass over to them to introduce themselves in the order from left to right, top to bottom. Bruce, would you like to introduce?
I guess that makes me first. Yeah, thanks, Ajay. So Bruce Parton, I'm the class of 91, finance major. Before that, I was an engineer. Worked as an engineer for several years. After Booth, worked in 3 venture capital-backed startups and product management roles. And sometime about 17 years ago, I changed careers and became a wealth manager and have my firm, Parkworth Wealth Management. I'm a certified financial planner and chartered financial analyst. And I help families manage their personal finances. Last year I wrote a book, and most of my clients working in Silicon Valley work in the tech industry. So last year I wrote a book called Personal Finance for Technology Professionals, which has some good practical advice on how to manage your finances. And I'll got some more things I'll share what we've been doing lately for folks here through the COVID situation.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. Going in the order, Gurinder?
Gurinder Dillo, I work for Aris Communication. Graduated from Booth in 2003. It's interesting looking at my career. I have pretty much done a complete 360. I started my career in automotive in Michigan and then moved to Chicago working for Motorola, doing product management, and then went to Booth. After that was in telecom for a while, doing product management, and moved to the Bay Area working for a startup. And interestingly, after that I was at Bain for a few years, and in the interim also worked for Foxconn. I don't know how many of you have heard about Foxconn, one of the largest manufacturers. And now I'm back working in automotive industry at Aris. We provide software platform for connected vehicles. So I lead product management for automotive. And it's interesting that my career started many years ago in automotive doing software development, and I'm now back in automotive, but doing connected vehicle. So this journey has been very interesting, and looking forward to talking to you about the impact of COVID.
Thank you for that, Gurinder. Very exciting and interesting journey. Justin?
I'm Justin Martin. I'm a graduate of 2005. I live in Los Altos with my wife, Lee Martin, who's also a graduate of 2005. I started my career after business school at Cisco Systems, was there for about 7.5 years, and then I transitioned to Bloom Energy, which is a fuel cell company, 6.5 years ago. And I took them, I run the FP&A department, and I took them from a private company to a public company, and now work on corporate FP&A with them even through the COVID crisis.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. Bharat?
Hi, everyone. This is Bharat. I'm a newbie in the Bay Area. It's been less than a year. Graduated in 2010. Prior to that, spent about a decade at Motorola And like Gurinder, seems like the circle comes back again where it started. I started as an engineer, came to Kearney, tried to do a lot of things, and finally ended up in high tech again, and that made my move to the area too. So I lead our tech practice and our product practice, and I live in Saratoga, so next to Justin, and I'm glad to be with you guys.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. One thing I do want to call out, in addition to their very distinguished profiles and backgrounds, I have had the pleasure of knowing all four of them personally. And I could tell you, besides just the people they are as great professionals, they are amazing people, all four of them. And I can probably talk about each one of them for the next 15 minutes, which I'm not going to do obviously on this call. But very briefly, Bruce's book on personal finance for tech professionals, if you have not had a chance to read it, amazing book. The way he has explained in simplicity the financial concepts for all the techies and how it is impacting the tech and wealth management part of their life. It's amazing. Bharat, I have not known anybody who is more integrated, dedicated to the Booth community. You message him, he'll reply to you middle of the night within few minutes. Gurinder, in addition to his diverse background, has many other personal skills and interests, which obviously enriches his perspective. And Justice, again, Justin, same thing. Great person, ask him any help or reach out to him. He is there to help you. So with that said, I would like to turn our first question over to our panel, talking about, like, there is no doubt that COVID-19 has impacted every single job function and most industries out there right now, right? The way we work now, to the way we operate our lives, to the way we just engage outside, everything has changed. So our first question that I want to put out there for the panel is, tell us about your personal experience within your companies, within your life. How has the pandemic and this situation impacted your company, the way you are interacting with your customers, your own employee and workforce, and overall your stakeholders and partners?
I'll go ahead.
Sure.
As I said earlier, we are in the automotive industry, serving a lot of the automotive customers. In terms of the end consumer, there has been a huge impact on the automotive industry. People are driving less now. Nobody's purchasing big ticket items. Gas prices, you have seen the impact of that. You have already seen the impact on rental companies because all the tourism has gone and their business travel has gone because of huge impact on rental companies. So that did not yet impact our customer. They're impacting them financially, but it's not impacting our project. But what they're already doing is tightening their belt. So because of that, they're reevaluating their projects. And interestingly, if you see, because of gas prices, they're reevaluating what is the impact on electric vehicles. How much time do they need to delay those projects because people will delay purchasing vehicles. So we are already seeing that being communicated from customers. Within our workforce, as a company, our workforce is pretty diverse. We work with not just development team here, but we have operating centers all over, and we have development partners all over the world. And what was interesting is within 3 days, less than a week, we were all adopted to the new online working environment, which is strange. We are more used to interacting physically, although we did work with our development teams remotely, but now they could not travel to offices. We have to have everyone on Zoom call. And I'm sure you others have experienced the same thing, but the adoption of us in technology, especially, to going and working remotely was very quick. Once our CEO communicated, within hours, we were all set. People were taking workstations and going home, and so it was very interesting to see that. And same thing with our partners. We did have challenges a little bit working with our partners because of the fact that we also have a lot of partners who are in automotive industry who are more used to the older ways of working. And especially on the East, if you see Japan, they are more, they prefer the interactive, personal interaction. So a lot of those meetings were suddenly reduced, but we adopted very quickly. The biggest impact was, of course, on the end consumer in the automotive industry, which resulted on our customers.
Oh, that's great. So Gurinder, maybe I can just ask you a bit more information. You brought up an amazing point about global, right? It's already, COVID has impacted different regions at slightly different points in time, if you know, right, basically. And then even the recovery or reopening is also very different and varied. Could you tell us a bit about, like, how do you maintain that single state of leadership from the top in an organization, but still allow that flexibility to your different global regional offices? How is that happening right now in your company?
Yeah, so we are doing many new activities in the company. Number one, the number of meetings have gone up because you need more touch points. Earlier, within our local offices, there was local leadership that was able to manage. Now, even the local leadership is remote. So the amount of interaction, the online interaction, our executives and everyone we have put together is to do a lot more one-on-ones with the employees. Second, we also put in a lot of focus on ways to bring everyone together. Example, we do a Fitbit challenge where we want people to go out there and exercise and report their data, and it kind of becomes a competition and people are able to report on it so that people keep in touch with each other and understand, we also, our HR has also instituted some games for people to play. So on a day-to-day basis, they will do trivias and other ways to people to chat online and provide that information. So the way for our executives to, and our whole ARIS management, for all of us to engage every employee is to find different venues, not just work venues, but social venues. We do example our Friday happy hour, where everyone gets together, drinks, and in their individual homes, in their backyards, and we do that. So same thing we have done in different regions to keep the employees engaged.
Excellent. That's a great point. And I think it's very true, like engaging in different ways. And I could tell you, like, these days we know more about our peers and our professional colleagues' personal life in a good way. We could tell their dogs' names, or we could probably know their kids, which grade they are in, which is an amazing, I mean, that's one positive side that I find outside of all the stress that's going on in COVID life, how much virtually we are able to connect with individual at the individual level. So thanks for sharing that. From here on, I want to use one of the points that Gurinder, you mentioned about the technology and quickly adopting that. And Bharat, I know that from your background, you are heavily engaged in terms of leading some of these practices for many of the phenomenal brands and organizations out there. So maybe we can jump onto you, again, same question, but how are you looking at the technology adoption and still the impact on the current life from customers, workforce, partners, and everybody?
So thanks, Ajay. I'll answer this question from two perspectives. One, from a consulting perspective and the clients that we serve, who basically are in the high-tech industry. If you look from a consulting perspective, it was a change of massive proportions. I took my last flight on March 5th, and by 6th evening, we had decided that we were not going to travel starting Monday. And that was like, okay, now what do we do? We were trained to be on a plane more than on the ground. So it was a shock, basically. For the first couple of weeks, and these 2.5 months have been like an eternity from, is it the end of the world as we know it? Or are we going to die? Or are we going to limp? Or are we going to somehow manage to crawl or survive? All these scenarios were built. I'm sure you guys have seen the V's, the double V's, the deep V's, the U's, the L's, God name every single letter that you can figure out. The first, I'd say March was very scary. We had absolutely no clue. And slowly and steadily, at that point of time, the World Economic Forum started an engagement with us, which was about, hey, let's try to understand what the heck is going on out there. So we start talking to about these executives in the tech space, over 400 of them. Very soon we realized the tech industry somehow got immune to it. I think immune is a very strong word, and there were a couple of things that maybe the tech industry learned a long time back that made the transition a little bit smooth. A couple of things Gurinder actually already touched upon. I mean, if you recall, back in the 90s, we learned how to carry a backpack with a computer in it. Now, the shape of the computer has changed, but we knew we take our work desk home pretty much every day. Globalization pretty much made us accustomed to taking evening calls, morning calls, Zoom calls, WebEx calls, whichever your favorite tool is. So as I started talking to my clients, their point was, haven't missed a beat, haven't missed a beat. And interestingly, quite a few tech firms, mostly in the infrastructure space and collaboration space, they actually saw a massive demand occurring out there, and which is now a foregone conclusion because of collaboration tools. And some people ignore the tech industry. Most of the other industries didn't know how to actually set up home, let's say a workstation or a home computer or something. There was a huge demand for that. So that sets the infrastructure piece of everything in perspective. Then came the people piece, which was very interesting how the tech industry, in my opinion, I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of HBS Chicago articles written on it over time, how tech industry captains basically set the tone for, I don't have a better word, but I'll just call it social responsibility for lack of vocabulary. Whether it was Microsoft or Google or whichever you take, they came out very quickly and say, we'll pay our contractors. The message came out that we care about our employees. And I've been in the industry about 30 years. I haven't seen the tech industry take such a very bold and a strong stance saying people are super important. Never it was doubted, but this became very clear. Not just employees, but even contractors. That, I think, set the tone for other people who were maybe on the fence. They're like, hey, if I do this, maybe it sets a bad precedent. So that took care of that. From a work perspective, both from consulting side as well as the tech side, one thing I've heard from everybody, the good is that the productivity increased across the board, no matter what. Whether people were traveling less or they were trying to make efforts so that they can somehow manage to reduce the impact of recession or whatever the behavioral factors were. But that also, 2.5 months later, started creating a burnout situation where now quite a few companies just told their employees, go take a day off or 2 days off. I don't want to see you on a phone call or something. So that kind of summarizes how this 2.5-month journey has been from a tech and consulting perspective. I don't have a lot of insights into other industries. Some are really struggling. There are places where positions are being eliminated and all. Not so much in the tech space.
Amazing. Very well summarized. And I could attest to many of them, what you said. I think one of the very important points that you touched on, Bharat, was a technology, high-tech industry view. And, good thing we have a great diversity on this panel. So Justin, maybe let's just take a shift to you, because you obviously are at the cutting edge or intersection of high-tech and energy, right, from the Bloom Energy perspective. So I want to hear your perspective. What are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, definitely. How it's impacted our company. We were deemed an essential business. We're a manufacturing company. We manufacture our fuel cells in Sunnyvale and Delaware. We've been open throughout the whole shutdown, manufacturing product. In finance, I haven't gone into the office, but our manufacturing employees go every day. Our supply chain has been able to make sure they get the product in that we need to manufacture. So when we have a global supply chain that's been very strong and great at doing that. Also throughout this, we found in the process that there was a need to refurbish ventilators in the state of California and on the East Coast. So we worked with the governor and we started refurbishing ventilators that were just in stockpiles, and we were able to turn those around and put them back so that they could be used now because they were just sitting. As well as it only had 10 patients, but it didn't need to be used that much. In the Sleep Train Arena in Sacramento, we were able to power that within 5 days. So if it had to be a COVID hospital, we got that up and running. So we've had a very flexible change of a lot of things. Now we're focusing on our customers. We haven't had any of our backlog be canceled throughout this, so our backlog still remains strong and has been growing as well. So it's been a very interesting time for us when half the company's at home, all the support staff, and half the company's in the office on the manufacturing floor, really working to develop our product, because we're also getting ready for fire season. And with all the public safety power shutdowns, that's one of the things a lot of our customers want to get more reliable power, and that's what we can provide for them.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I think speaking of the Chicago booth impact, right? It's right there. What you just described, Justin. Tell us a bit more about this whole experience of getting engaged with the governments, like you mentioned, with the governor's office, in terms of contributing to this ventilators initiative. I'm sure many people here would love to hear the type of impact that you're driving there.
Yeah, we had
Ajay, can I pile on your question?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Justin, so first of all, thank you for pulling this. 2.5 months ago, we were struggling trying to help some of these healthcare companies get somebody to do some ventilators. And there are quite a few like yourself who somehow stepped up. Could you also share, how did you actually conclude that this was, you guys had the capability to do it and you'll figure out a way to do it? Because you guys don't make ventilators. I asked this question in the backdrop of there were quite a few other companies in US who we thought were primed to do that, who could have stepped up, but for whatever reason they chose not to, whether it was technical or whatever reason. So would be good if you could walk us through your thought process, your company's thought process, both behaviorally and technically. How did you manage to pull this feat off? But thank you again.
That's a great question. So, so what happened is when we saw the need for ventilators and we saw that there's a huge stockpile that needed to be refurbished, we had a couple people in engineering and a couple people in operations actually read the manuals for these ventilators. And they said, I know how to refurbish these and I can do it right away. So within 24 hours, we reached out to the state and said, send us a batch of ventilators and let's see if we can do it. They sent the first batch of ventilators. We turned them around within a day, and then they just kept on shipping other ventilators. And so we got certified to do that, and really just by ingenuity, looking at it, and really the drive to really help a pandemic that was going on, we were just turning them around as fast as possible. And people volunteered. These were people that weren't on the manufacturing line. These were people that were in our operations team. They volunteered to step up to come into the office, build a makeshift manufacturing line to refurbish all these ventilators. So it was really an amazing turnaround. And it was just because people wanted to help and we knew we could help. And we saw that stuff was sitting idle that could be turned around and put back in to be productive ventilators.
Thank you for that. I mean, Justin, amazing work at the ground level. I mean, like I said, we could probably take our entire panel discussion just speaking and listening to your experience on the ground and how it has impacted positively to all the workers, to all the care professionals and individuals. So thank you. But in the interest of time, moving on, you know what? One of the things that we are realizing now, every industry, every workforce is getting impacted, but at the same time, individuals are also getting impacted. And when I think about, as myself or all of you think about, one thing that obviously outside of this crazy schedule that comes to our mind is our finances. How does my long-term financial goal get impacted? And that's why, Bruce, I think it would be amazing to hear from you, what is happening on the ground that you are seeing from your industry, from the personal finance, from the small business financial goals and planning perspective. And at the same time, how are you coping up with your workforce in this new time?
Yeah, so a few thoughts there. First, it's been amazing to watch finance companies, commercial banks, brokerage firms, insurance companies, most of the financial industry, because we are all required in some way or another to have a business continuity plan. Most of the firms didn't skip a beat. with this, and everybody just went immediately to remote working. And one day we're talking to Fidelity Investments, back office team in Boston. The next day they're at home in New Hampshire, wherever they were. So that part has just been amazing. Markets have continued to function. We can talk about some of the things the Federal Reserve did, which was just amazing compared to the global financial crisis. But that whole part of the U.S., that sector, just continued to work and operate basically normally. So that was really intriguing. Refinances, we were talking with clients about, interest rates have never been so low. Let's get refinanced, go refinance your home mortgage. And that sounded great in theory, but it turned out that refinance rates didn't actually drop as low as, say, if you're following the 10-year treasury, as low as it got, because there was so much demand for loans that the processors just got overloaded, and they're still overloaded. So you can still get refinanced, but it's taken a little longer. Not necessarily COVID related, just demand related. There's just so much work. So that was really interesting. I think the story of the pandemic was really one of just abject fear. I mean, I've never seen people so afraid. And I'm a veteran of the global financial crisis, where we had, the S&P 500 between sort of October of 2007 down to dropped to March of 2009 by about 56%. I mean, you were down quite a bit, and that was very scary. But that happened over 18 months, versus this time, we're coming off of a 10-year bull market, and we've been warning people for a long time. We're probably going to see a correction. Don't know what's going to cause it. Didn't anticipate it being a pandemic, but we got our correction. But the market dropped S&P 500 down about 31% in 83 days or so. So we went from 18 months to 83 days. The speed of this was just terrifying, and it did scare a lot of people. We tried to make the point: markets are volatile. Stay invested. And it didn't work as well, those soothing words this time. And we actually lost some folks who didn't follow our advice and sold out, unfortunately, near the bottom, and haven't reinvested yet. So they've actually hurt themselves pretty bad. So the kind of calming advice that we were trying to offer was, this wasn't as bad as the global financial crisis. Economy was healthy before. This is a medical problem. It'll get resolved. The economy is still actually healthy underneath the medical problem. And we're expecting a recovery, and that essentially is what's happened. Not completely yet, but as of today, like a 60% stock, 40% bond portfolio is down about 5% for the year right now. So very manageable, and well within the range of volatility that we kind of program into clients' financial plans. We already program in a lot of this volatility, and even though this has been pretty extreme, it's still, people's financial plans and retirements are still intact, even with this level of volatility. So that's been comforting to people as well too.
Thank you for that, Bruce. Look, I have one question which has been out in the media, and I personally want to understand as well the massive disconnect between the economy state of situation versus the stock market, which don't go hand in hand right now, but I'll save that question for the later. So in the interest of time, that was a great perspective. What I would like to move on now to, hey, while this has happened, and some of you already alluded to the answers to this question already, but let's just go into a bit more detail. When this was all happening, you have one side of the equation as the leader within your organization, within your industry, within your household. You are trying to cope up with and be a great leader for your employees. But then what are some of the steps identical that you are taking to just cope up with the new norm? And we heard about the technology already. Sure, everybody's talking on Zoom now. But what I'm more interested in hearing about is, how do you maintain that employee connect? How do you secure your company's proprietary information, data in this new world? How do you keep that personal connection with your customers, right? So maybe we'll just go around here. I want to hear, what's the new normal for you now?
So Jay, I can share a little bit from our perspective. There are two parts to it, how I would break this problem down, or what what we are trying to do. What is being done in a formal, organizational, and a very structured manner, and what is some informal stuff. I'll start with informal because I personally believe that's a lot that makes a huge difference. So as soon as you also have to understand we are a partner-led firm, so we're about 300 plus partners. It's easy to start making calls because at least we know it's our firm. When you are looking at somebody else to do that job, it becomes a little bit difficult. So one thing we did very diligently in the first 4-6 weeks was pick 10, 12 people, that juniors basically, that we were close to, and we would just call them very often, just checking with them. That was the smallest thing. It gave us a good sense for the pulse versus going through some very formal means, which we deployed, and I'll get to that. The other piece, what I would say, this is what the seniors did, but the juniors did something very interesting too. They started pushing for these virtual happy hours on a very regular basis, and that made a lot of people join. And I think Guneet or somebody else, Gurinder or somebody else was mentioning how these virtual happy hours are becoming more and more meaningful. We've had people take their phone or walk around their home telling people how their home looks like, their garden looks like. So there has been a little bit more connection on the informal side too. Moving to the formal side, I think communication, over communication, I cannot stress it more, because that has like avoided the void where people make up stuff, and that making up generally is on the negative side. That is somehow we have avoided. I won't claim to say that there are still not like negative sentiments or some rumors floating around, but mostly I would say very high grade on the positive side. Whether it is the American leadership or is the firm leadership, there are weekly updates, whether they are video updates or personal podcasts, video messages, whatever that may be. I'll keep it short, but hopefully you guys get the point on it. That has pretty much kept it in the loop. And we're listening, whether it's listening on Fishbowl. I don't know how many you are on Fishbowl. Some people feel comfortable sharing some things on Fishbowl, so we pick up inputs from there. And then it's your personal connections with people, pretty much your employees, trying to figure out what their struggles may be. One big issue that came up, that even though you are healthy, maybe you have a problem in the family, you have some friends, and maybe that is bugging you. Getting a sense for that and being empathetic towards that and giving people space, I think was one big learning personally for me, especially as this whole pandemic unfolded and people kind of struggled with that. Some people couldn't even travel.
Excellent. No, great points. Anyone else wants to share here from the panel?
So some of the interesting things, similar things what we have done in the company is we have created these groups, which are basically Zoom calls that will always be going on. So that if people are, example, dog lovers, right? So they can dial into it, and everyone who has dogs, when they have free times in between, and the requirement of that Zoom call is you have to show your video. So people can see each other in their normal environment as if you're talking, and you can talk to anyone. Hey, how are you doing? You can have informal conversation, and people don't mind it because it's about specific groups, people who want to talk about their kids. So you see kids running in the background, and then so there are like 4 or 5 different groups, interest groups that people can join in between the calls. The other thing we have done is we have certain meetings that we have made it mandatory for people to turn on their video. It's not necessarily 100% mandatory, but people come in and they understand expectation is to have your video on, so that you kind of dress up and you think that you're going to work and you are in that more, at least the mindset that I'm going to work. I already talked about the happy hour. There's some ideas also floating around. Maybe in the happy hour, we start doing some talent show. So people have their kids and they come in and present certain talent. So that is still kicking around. Hopefully we'll start in a couple of weeks where people can, be more open to having their family engaged in those events. So that's one from an employee perspective. From a customer perspective, what we are doing is we are trying to get these things over to customers also and saying, hey, this is what we are doing. Not that as a matter of, hey, you have to do this, but we want them to be more open to also sharing the video because it creates the experience much more interactive. So we are doing certain meetings where we'll do one-on-one meetings and we will turn on our videos with the customer. The reason is if we don't turn on the video, then the customer feels excluded and they don't want to have that initiative of turning on the video. So we are seeing more that when we turn on the video, they turn on the video also, and we see more interaction, and we see them more in their comfortable environment. And again, the point about empathy and being able to understand their situation and being able to talk to them about the issues they're facing, it becomes more interactive because now we can see the person. So those are some of the examples how we are working both with internally with our employees and with our customers.
Excellent. I want to move to Justin. Justin, very interesting perspective you shared where you have almost 50% of your workforce working remote, but 50% is still out there at the manufacturing line and doing this critical path projects that I would like to call, right? What does the new normal look like for you now?
Yeah, so the new normal, I mean, as everybody said, the people that are home, we've been, doing the virtual happy hours. We've been doing more one-on-ones, video chats. We've also done a thing called Bloom's Got talent shows that people come and submit videos and they get ranked. And we've done, for all the stress, because this has created a lot of stress on the employee base, we've done meditation series as well to help the employees. In the manufacturing line, it has been a complete 180, how to make sure people are 6 feet apart. If they're not 6 feet apart, how to make sure they have masks. We've had to hire and train people on the manufacturing line through this process. And you could imagine how difficult it is to train somebody to operate a machine if you can't be very close to them. So it's been a very big learning process and really had to redesign a lot of our employee training for the manufacturing plant. And it's been working with those manufacturing employees because they have to come in every day and, all the news stories are out there and making sure they're not, stressed at work and making sure everybody's understanding and productive there. So it's been a big learning on that side on how to redesign our plant to make it people farther apart as well as less interaction between the employees.
And again, all I can say is a big thank you to everybody who is in the assembly line, manufacturing line in your company. Sheer the fact that they're out there every day in the field, ready, prepped, and working hard with everything they can to produce all these important things out there is just amazing. So thank you for that. Bruce, what is the new normal for your team now and your organization?
Yeah, I probably have the smallest team here. I have a small business. Team's only 5 folks. So the funniest thing is every morning now we have a call at 10 and we have one to wrap up in the day at 4. And so we make a point now of hopping on the call in the morning and somebody announces what day of the week this is because we all forget what day it is. So that's actually been amazingly important. It sounds silly, but it is. Just in terms of staying productive, our phone system is Ring Central and it has built-in Zoom. So there's a chat and whenever some people are chatting all day, and then if somebody needs to talk, they just click on a video call and then they're right there, in person with the person they need to talk to. I'm pretty sure that when we get back in the office, no one's ever going to get out of their chair again and they're just going to hit the video call button and talk to the people next to them because it's so much more convenient. So that's been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I've still, one more thing, I've still managed to, some of our partners that we work with, there's a estate planning attorney that I work with regularly, and we like to talk football over lunch. So we've been having, lunch on Zoom, get some food, eat lunch on Zoom, and still having lunch dates, just like always. So trying to do things as normal as possible.
Great. If you think about, thanks for all this input and perspectives. If you think about, there is a consistent theme of empathy and compassion. And at this point, I almost feel tempted to share what some of the things my firm, who I'm proud to work for as Salesforce, is doing. And I think this is some of the things are very very clearly outlined, but there is a slightly different element to it. So, as soon as this March 6th came, our organization announced that absolutely from March 6th, everybody works home, starts gathering, stockpiling their 1 or 2 months of essentials that they need. And since then, there are at least 3 or 4 practices that we also have been following, and which is really helping us keeping going in this new normal. The first one is every Wednesday morning, our CEO gets on a phone, 9 o'clock Pacific time, with entire 55,000 workforce across the globe. This is 1 hour with that massive organization sharing top of the mind and what is now and what is coming. As a leader, I'm sure you all can attest to this one. Our responsibility is really essentially threefold, right? Is bring clarity, bring sense of prioritization, and energy to our workforce. And that is exactly what has been experienced in my organization right now. Other things like Gurinder, you mentioned, we have every other day, we have a call from 12 to 1 during lunchtime where we just come with our kids and do some activity, whether it's a drawing or whatnot you call about. But here's the phenomenal part of it, and that is a kind of a segue to my next question. While we have been trying to do all these important things to keep up the morale of our workforce, our partners, and how stressful we are, still have that chin-to-chin smile literally on our faces, is basically, hey, we have to run our business. We have to keep that numbers thing going. We still have to get the bills paid at the end of the day. And what we have been doing essentially is every other week, we have been trying to pivot to make sure we are fast. We are quick to respond to the market needs before most people out there and the organizations out there recognize that. So we start the 2 weeks from March with the empathy message, really, and we meant it. We took care of our people. We gave them everything that they could. We gave them several $100s of reimbursement, getting their work from home essentials set up. But then after 2 weeks, we quickly pivoted to, hey, what is the new messaging? What does the new product set look like for this new normal? And after 2 weeks from then, we talked about now is the time to start focusing on the long-term path of the revenue. So with that said, I want to kind of take a segue. Until now, sure, the message has been, hey, there is a lot of empathy. Sure, the message has been, yes, we do need to take care of our people. But one of the fundamental ways we take care of our people is to keep our business running at the end of the day. So I want to quickly move is, how do you keep the business, the revenue afloat? How do you make sure we, our customers and our partners, don't get up into the situation where we hear all those tragedies, whether you talk about Hertz or whether you talk about particular industry like airline or retail, we don't get into that kind of a unfortunate situation where there is slow or no revenue coming for several months. So what I'm interested in hearing from each of you as the panel members is, what is get back to the business plan for all of us right now? Bharat, maybe I can start with you if you don't mind, because you are seeing both the sides from the consulting as your business as well as a long clientele that you have.
Happy to. So look, my company's perspective is going to be pretty straightforward. And I think Gurinder can probably attest to it since he's been a consultant before. Consulting is not really sold. You can't run around and sell management consulting. It's bought. Somebody has a problem, they call you, they trust you, so we can't do anything. We can't run around. We can't make 20 calls and say, buy my consulting. That ain't going to happen. So call it serendipitously, call it surprisingly, call it however the industry has been. We haven't seen a massive dip or something. So it's been reasonably good compared to all the predictions that we had. But I'll answer it from what we are sharing with our clients. One thing that has come up, well, again, it's a 10-week journey. In the beginning, it was like, how do you stabilize yourself and get a status of what's going on? I'd say there was a pretty binary response from most clients. One who had suffered 2008 and learned from 2008 had their contingency plans ready. When something like this would happen, they knew how to set up their command and control centers, who the people will be, how the communication will happen. So there is no gaps out there. Then there were others who either came into being after 2008 or didn't think that could again happen or whatever that may be. They struggled in the beginning, but give a few weeks here and there with struggles and limpings and all, everybody somehow managed to get a good handle on the situation. Now comes the part of like, what do we do? And when will this end? And nobody has a very clear answer to it. So everybody builds scenarios. And interestingly, whether it's consulting firms or it's client sides or whoever that may be, everybody came with 3 or 4 scenarios. One was the V, that the economy dips and then comes back very quickly. Some people talked about the deep V. It's pretty much the same. Some thought there will be double Vs. It goes down, comes back, goes down again because the pandemic again comes back. There was the U, and the L. L is more like a check mark, which takes a longer period. So I'd say today we are somewhere leaning towards more like a slower recovery. Now, some good things have happened, and then I'll get to what we are sharing with the government has pumped in a lot of money, pretty much most governments, and I would love to hear from Bruce too, what is his opinion on how is that money helping stimulate some of the economy and even the markets. And then the last piece is, what are we telling our clients to do? 10 weeks ago, it was something different. Today, it's a little bit different as things are. One big message that I have personally honed in on, and pretty much I'd say most clients also understand that do not try to sell to the customers of today or yesterday. The customer of tomorrow is going to be very different, and it's all driven by behavioral needs as they have changed over the last 10 weeks. Whether it is adoption of collaboration technologies, whether it's getting very comfortable with your e-commerce, and there is a joke that floats around that who led your digital disrupt or digital transformation, CEO, chief digital officer, or COVID? I don't know if it is a real joke or if it's a real survey, but COVID wins hands down. So look at e-commerce, how it's kind of finally just exploded and everybody doesn't want to go to a store. That's the good piece. There is a very tricky piece. If you survive not going to a mall for 2.5 months, would you really want to go to a mall after they open up in 4, 5, 6 months from now? The consumer behavior is definitely changing. Again, there is a lot more emphasis on maintaining connections. Home is becoming important. A while ago, people said like the new generation doesn't care about anything. They don't care about their home, all that kind of good stuff. So that will be there. The other piece, some learnings that we had, resiliency is going to become very, very important. And if you look at historically, we have always chased low costs or whatever reasons we have had. Resiliency is going to become important. And companies that were distributed, whether it was we learning how to work from home or having multiple places to operate from, they have fared better than some very, very centralized. Exceptions may be there, but I'm talking in generalities. And then finally, the companies in 3, 4, 5 years who will be written about, talked about, manage their cash very, very well. It wasn't that they hoarded the money, but they figured out where to invest. They were agile in how to scrap their annual plan and very quickly redraw their plan, that how are we going to get out of it without saying that the world is coming to an end.
Great point. You know what, Gurinder, I want to move to you because Bharat mentioned a couple of very interesting and thought-provoking ideas here. Let's start with the first one, the retail. What do you think? Will we ever go back to the same way of going to the malls in the foreseeable future?
So I feel as part of the retail, there's some retail that is going to significantly change. But remember, retail is one part, but there's also a lot of the service industry that people are right now, there's a pent-up need in people. You have seen that where reopening has happened. It is not about people are running back to store. Actually, they are running back to bars. They're running back to restaurants. They're running back to hair salons. And that part is going to definitely, the way of interaction will change and how people get those services will change. But the people's need for those services is not going to change, and they would want to go out there. In terms of retail, definitely a huge impact. Retail industry, as Bharat said, was already under transformation. This just increases the speed at which they have to transform, and a lot of the ones that are not transforming, they are going to basically be left out. And the ones that were already in trouble will close out faster. We are already seeing Sears, JCPenney, and others. So I feel retail people are going to start getting more accustomed to buying things online. There was a certain category of people that were not used to buying online. Now they were forced, and they were forced to adopt that experience. And they will continue to change, and they will continue to basically switch their sales to online. So the retail industry has to correspondingly decide, figure out how they want to keep those customers and how they want to switch. Whereas, as said, the services industry definitely will remain, but it will transform in figuring out, until this COVID situation is there, they will figure out how to adopt and evolve, but people's need is going to be there. You're going to see people start taking more and more risk because people are already tired of sitting in the house, especially in certain regions of the country.
Yeah, no, great perspective. And with that, if you want to, round up your perspective on your company now, what are the plans and measures being taken, especially when you, at the beginning, mentioned at the end customer level, there is an impact, there is a slowness now there. So how do you keep the company afloat with the point that Bharat made? How do you manage that cash well while still being able to pay all the expenses which are out there?
So interestingly, our company has two major businesses. One is our IoT connectivity business, which is it's basically subscription revenue, higher cash flow, and we have a lot of automotive companies out there that every month that generate revenue, even if the vehicle is not being used because the contracts are that way. And a lot of medical devices, a lot of trucking fleets that are out there which were still operating. So from a cash perspective, we have been safe. The second part of the business, which is our where we are investing a lot of money, which is the connected vehicle business. That's where we have decided not to actually reduce our investment. We are continuing to invest in that because we feel, especially a situation like COVID, is going to further enhance the adoption of those. You are already seeing dealerships now sending the codes for vehicle. If you want to go try a car, they will say it's a no touch interface to the customer. Mm-hmm. So the customer will be sent a code, especially for the vehicles that have a remote vehicle turning on, and they will give you a code and you can remotely turn on the vehicle, sit in the car, go drive it, and they will clean it before and after. So China has already adopted that in many places. So that will further increase the adoption of the connected vehicle technology. We are basically right now putting our money in those kinds of programs in addition to our connected car, because connected car is not, as I said, not going away. The other part that has interesting impact is mobility as a service. That whole industry is really going through a lot of turmoil right now. You're already seeing impact on Lyft, Uber. They're already having a huge impact, but question is, would that impact be permanent or temporary? It all depends. I think until this situation, until a vaccine is found, people are not going to be comfortable sitting in an Uber or Lyft. So there's going to be huge impact until that time. But once that vaccine comes through, I think people will be back to, because people want to be able to have the flexibility of not owning a car and, going and getting in a car. But by that time, as the autonomous vehicle might come in, then there's no need for the Uber and Lyft will switch over to autonomous vehicle, but that is further away. This might enhance the adoption of autonomous vehicle, definitely. And we are investing in those areas.
Great perspective. Justin, I want to move on to you. How do we balance this left and right-hand side from the fact that, it's a great perspective Gurinder mentioned, the connected car investment is still continuing to be on from their perspective. And now, not exactly from automotive, but your company from the manufacturing side of the world, like what do you see and what are the plans? Because obviously the operating cost is not like operating a subscription business for you. And you mentioned your backlog is pretty strong right now. So that tells that there is a great demand and it's just a matter of time that you can pick up the productivity even to the next level. What are your immediate plans of the company now?
Yeah, so our immediate plans, like all companies, or a lot of companies, we looked at what our critical spend areas are, and we, set in mode to conserve cash. So we did that. We also, a lot of our revenue is based on when the product finally gets installed. So we have to work with authorities having jurisdiction to allow our energy servers to operate. And so that has slowed a little bit in timing due to COVID, because getting people out there to do inspections has slowed it down. So that has caused us to just make sure we set project timelines a little longer than we would in the past, and say, okay, it's going to be taking longer for the utilities to work with us because they just don't have as much flow right now, and people out in the field. So that's definitely one thing we're looking at, and that caused us in Q2 on our earnings call we didn't get guide to Q2 guidance because of that, because we just don't know what the impact on each jurisdiction. In the U.S., there's a lot of different jurisdictions. You have federal, state, and then municipal jurisdictions, and everybody is doing something different. So it's very hard to predict what's going to be in a town like Los Altos versus LA versus New York City. They're all at different restrictions. So that's caused us to have to more look state by state, county by county, what's going to happen, and plan at a more granular level, because it is taking a little longer to do construction work or putting stuff in the ground, as we say, to finally turn on our energy service.
Excellent. I want to move on to Bruce. Bruce, amongst this overall question, what I want to ask you, and that is, I want each of the panel members' perspective on, is also the communication to your stakeholders, whether it's customers or partners. I mean, one thing is having the plan built out, whether, like Bharat, you mentioned phenomenal depth and breadth of the analysis of scenario planning, or Justin, you mentioned about controlling and relooking at your cash measures, or whether, Gurinder, you talked about the strategic decision of keeping some critical investment going. That's one thing. But how do you communicate tough decisions that your board doesn't want to hear, your customers sometimes or most times don't want to hear, if that is not the right way? So let's start with Bruce in terms of the first perspective, and then we'll go around on this question.
Right. Well, so in our clients, communicating is much like this. It's been Zoom calls, face-to-face. Folks are scared, so we remind them about the fundamentals of the plan that they have in place, and that it's still on track, even given the current market downturn. But then, our job gets really difficult during times like this. We're essentially, well-trained in finance, but at the end of the day, we're behavioral coaches. So we have to keep people from doing things that might hurt themselves long-term. And it gets harder and harder when people are scared. People have, extreme loss aversion, we know from behavioral economics. And it's a real challenge. So, over-communicating is very important. Trying to reassure people with, historical data. We've been through downturns like this before. So that's been a big part of it. I think, Brian, actually, maybe I'll just follow on with your question about, to me, about sort of the Federal Reserve and the activity there. In the 2007, 2009 sort of Great Recession, the Fed dumped about $800 billion of stimulus into the economy, quantitative easing the first time. This time, Fed's up to about $2 million of counting of sort of direct lending facilities, plus they've cut interest rates to zero, plus they've got an open-ended quantitative easing going. So that's been tremendous response from the Fed. Congress put in place another $2.2 trillion or so of fiscal stimulus. So we've got the folks that are in charge of keeping the economy sort of stabilized, or at least trying to give us all confidence in the economy, have done a tremendous job. in fact, in a way, inoculated by the global financial crisis. We had a little taste of it then. We kind of did some new things with the quantitative easing. The Fed learned the lesson and has sort of done that, faster and bigger this time, which I think has been enormously helpful in stabilizing markets and helping market participants and even individuals feel more comfortable about what's going on.
A great point here. Yeah, so anyone wants to start on the communication part to the customers and stakeholders? How are you planning or already starting to do with that?
Sure, Jay. As you know, as consultants, we never have an easy task communicating because generally we have the hard messages to share. So I don't think that has changed. What has changed is how those messages are being perceived and received. Depending upon which situation you find yourself in, are you some of the high-tech companies who basically saw a tremendous growth because of COVID? The message gets perceived very differently. We did a survey on, this was 10 weeks ago. We had about 80 odd executives on a webinar where we asked them, hey, what's most important on your mind? Is it operate? Is it survive? Is it focus on growth and investment? This is 10 weeks ago. About 30% people at that time thought we are purely focused on post-COVID growth and innovation, which was a big surprise for us. We thought it was right in the beginning, people would be thinking about, just thinking about operating and surviving. Then you have people who are like their entire annual plans have been busted. So no matter how much you tell them, what you communicate, there is just too much going on in their world that no matter what you tell them, they'll end up making suboptimal decisions because of various constraints out there. It's become a little bit difficult given that we were comfortable sitting in a room and using analogies and whiteboards and all that kind of stuff. So we do miss that. But I'd say the messages have gone out. Have they been 10 on a 10? I don't know. I give it a score of more like 8 on a 10 on how they get perceived. But I would say it's still better than what it could have been. And I think Gurinder mentioned like turning on videos, forcing others to turn on videos. So that's something we've pushed. At least tried to make eye contact, at least on a video. That has reduced the barriers a little bit, but I think it's still a challenge. So that's kind of externally. Internal communication has been pretty much, as I mentioned before, both verbal, informal, formal. Some decisions are difficult, some are easy, but there is not something very different we are doing that we wouldn't have done before.
Sure. Yep. Any last moment comments on this communication part, Justin, Gurinder?
Yeah, I think I highlight what everybody else said, but I mean, we try to over communicate in multiple different forms of communication. Large all hands, having more all hands, having more, skip level messaging, and then with the customer, over communicate with the customer as well, telling them, what things are going on, when they're going to get their products and everything, and just really, I wouldn't call it handholding, but just communicate much more than you would in the past is what we've been doing, which takes more time, but it makes people feel more at ease and really understand what's going on. And if there are tough messages to communicate, putting those out in the open early and not trying to, just wait till it's too late, communicating all the messages and even the tough ones early.
Yeah, no, great. All right, so in the interest of time, I would like to keep going. Now, I'm not sure if our attendees have observed what the panelists have been saying, but there is a consistent theme of several key points. One of the things I want to highlight, at least what I have heard and captured so far, is just the sheer amount of positivity that each of your voice, tones, messages are still calling out. And it's just so refreshing for me personally to hear from our own Booth alumni community that indeed out there on the ground, the sentiment has that positivity and the positive surround sound. But let's take and I think from the organization perspective, you already mentioned your outlook for the next several months maybe or several weeks. Things are moving very quickly. I want to pivot very quickly to a little bit thinking about the economy or macroeconomical view. And this is more a point of view, so I recognize and respect there is no right or wrong answer. It is based on your individual, your organization's experiences and the data that you are seeing. But maybe I can start with you, Bruce, this time. What do you think is the outlook going to be of our economy, of our businesses and our companies at the macro level for the next 3, 6, 12 months?
Yeah, and I admit to being positively optimistic most of the time. So I am optimistic. One thing that's been impressing me is just how entrepreneurial, how creative, how adaptive everyone I'm working with and everybody I'm talking to and all the video calls I'm seeing and all the webinars and watching businesses all over the country and all over the world just adapt to the situation in blindingly fast speed. So that actually makes me, optimistic that we'll figure things out. And no, we've never seen this before, but we'll get it figured out. There's a lot of smart people with really good intentions doing the right stuff. So that makes me optimistic. But just some data around that. I mean, there's 10. I was just looking this afternoon. There's 10 vaccines in human trials right now. That's amazing that happened so quickly. And there is just enormous sums of money poured into that research right now, and lots of very talented people. So I'm optimistic that we'll have a solution, faster than anyone ever thought was possible. It reminds me of the telecom. Gurinder worked in telecom too. How so much venture capital poured into that area that basically all the bandwidth problems in the world got solved, and a bunch of companies had to go out of business because there was no more problem to solve. And that hopefully that'll happen here as well. That just you got a lot of bright people with a lot of financial incentive. Markets are doing what they're supposed to do and sending people to work on this problem, and it's getting worked on real quick. So I'm optimistic.
That's great to hear. Thanks for that. Whoever wants to go next?
So Ajay, here's my take. My first, how would I say, exposure to a situation like this was 2000. And I was relatively new in US and the world nearly came to an end. And then the next one was, I'd say 9/11 was close to it. 2008 was really massive. But as Bruce said, this time it's very different. The sentiment has been positive from the very beginning, with the confidence that we'll figure out a way to get out of it. And by the way, I'm not going to preach any economics to a bunch of economists who were trained by Nobel laureates. I don't want to look stupid. But somehow there is this, I think it was Hearst who once said that you cannot study recessions because no national government will allow you to run an experiment. You can just make inferences. There is something different about it. And I don't know, maybe 3-4 years from now, we'll figure out why this happened or why this didn't happen. But there are 2 or 3 messages I think I am very convinced that at least, if not every industry, at least the tech and supply chain industries will definitely see a change. One, it's a near given that the supply chains as we know today will get redefined. Even before COVID, the trade wars were there. And everybody we talked to in the industry, they said this time it's a little different. And I'm talking September, October, before anybody even knew how to spell COVID. That every time there was a trade war, people thought like supply chains will move out of China, blah, 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 blah. But everybody said this time it seems different, it seems different. COVID has just accelerated what was actually about to happen. So now, given that, the beneficiaries of this movement, I don't see a lot of manufacturing coming back to US per se. Some things we may, whether they are policy driven or whether it's even Europe. But the other 13, we generally call the LCC the 14s, the other 13 are already seeing some benefits and some will see benefits. Vietnam has seen a lot of benefits coming out of it. It was easy because that was kind of the backup. The challenge with Vietnam is it's a small country. It cannot be the factory of the world. So others are stepping up, whether it's the Malaysias, and India is making a big push. What India is pushing is a big economy itself and a big demand. The other piece, which not sure exactly how it will pan out, but there is a very high likelihood, whichever reason is, that 30% of the global market may not be available to the Western countries. And by Western, I mean non-China companies. Because if you are following what's happening, some embargoes are being put. 30% of revenue for most tech companies, I wouldn't say everybody, but most technology companies is somehow associated with China. And if that market gets closed, people will have to live with about 70% of the market. And I'd say that creates a big challenge, because if that happens, there could be stack wars, like, which is very geeky term to say. China makes its own semiconductor, Western world has its own semiconductor, and then pretty much it's another technology Cold War. I hope it doesn't happen, but given the amount of money that China has invested in its technology infrastructure and how things are panning out right now, the backlash or whatever, I give it a high likelihood of plausibility that the tech stack wars may be on the cards for the next 10 years.
That is a phenomenal perspective. Thank you, Bharat. And that's just so refreshing to hear what you just described. From the newness of that point of view is just amazing. Thanks for that. Gurinder, Justin, any thoughts here?
So it's interesting, what we have seen just in the last couple of months, how cautious people are about spending, number one. So every family all over the world have tightened their belt. We have seen the reduction in spending significantly, which means people are prepared if this is going to last for a while. I think people will be cautious in starting the spending until they get enough indications. As you said earlier, the stock market might be overly optimistic because people are looking, much more forward than now. But I think over the next, until a vaccine comes into play, people are going to hold off on spending. You're not going to see big ticket items or even, medium ticket electronics sale or automotive take off until that happens. But I'm optimistic for the 12-month period, because I think what will happen, people will get accustomed to this, number one. People have already gotten a lot accustomed to this situation now. And then hopefully, vaccine will be out there. If we have already 10 vaccines in human trial, even with the success of a couple of them, there's a high likelihood of, something coming out and being successful and being able to, provide immunity to people. In terms of, the ability of people to adopt to this thing, I think that's another factor, that people are willing to go make a bet now, and people are ready with the cash, and that's why you're seeing stock market. So I think the stock market might see a little bit dip if things become worse, but it's not going to be as significant as what we saw earlier. Again, I'm not a stock expert, but I'm looking at from a market. We have already seen pretty worse situation out there. So I'm cautiously optimistic, basically, if that's the word I have to put for the future.
Justin, bring us home. Is that the same cautiously optimistic perspective do you have, or do you want to be an outlier here?
No, we're very optimistic, cautiously optimistic. I mean, for our business, as I said earlier, we didn't have any canceled orders, so that's great. It's also highlighted their quality issue. If you look at photos from India, that, it's been a lot clearer now. There's a lot, so it's highlighting that in the clean energy. How do we clean up the grid as a whole? And it's also brought into the resiliency from our customer base, from our data centers, and especially hospitals that want a resilient grid. So I'm definitely optimistic as we move forward.
Excellent. Now, we are almost running at time now. I want to quickly highlight that throughout the theme, it's positivity, is optimism. And I think some of you implicitly alluded the answer to this last question that we have. But maybe very briefly, in a minute or so, what do you think are going to be two biggest outcome in terms of positive disruptions come out of this situation? Gurinder, we heard like connected car could be one of them. Bharat, your point about this new way of operating the supply chain. But are these the top of your mind?
It's hard for me to say what my top two are, but I would say those were operational. If you're looking at disruption, I want to share something else. And if anybody is interested, connect with me offline. I did not do this study. My couple of colleagues did. They studied the 5 major disruptions in the last 100 years, starting with the Spanish flu, then moving to the Great Depression, World War II, 2008, and now. One thing that came out very interesting from it is the industry that created that was nearly disrupted after this kind of a disruption happened. So I go with my colleague's prediction, and I think the healthcare industry gets disrupted. And I can say this from a personal perspective. My wife happens to be a physician, so she's seeing a lot in there. I won't talk a lot about that. But I think telemedicine finally becomes the real thing. And I call it the Uber moment for healthcare. Like Uber changed how smartphones were used, and everybody wanted to follow the Uber model. Telemedicine finally comes to fore. Now, that can have good and bad effects. The good could be that the cost of delivery goes down. A lot of useless infrastructure that goes on to transporting people and having people wait and all goes away. Maybe that addresses some of our healthcare needs. This is the Western world problem. Then I talk about the developing world problem where physicians are just not accessible to them. Maybe this allows physicians to be accessible to people where there are no infrastructure. So that would be one. The other, I think the technology industry, again, kind of from, as I mentioned in the beginning, from a social championship perspective. And I think we'll see more and more technology getting into non-technical technology industries and disrupting it even more, whether it's your digital transformations, whether it is people moving to cloud or people doing collaboration or a lot of people doing work from home, because now people figured out that it's really possible to be in your own room for 2.5 months and not miss a beat. That's kind of my take on what happens.
Thank you for that, Bharat. Maybe I can just pick the name, Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, in our world, DocuSign became way more important. So to be able to legally execute a signature and not have to send mail around, I think, you know, we talked about paperless office and the end of mail. Well, this actually might be really killing U.S. mail forever. Because I certainly don't want to go to the office again to have to pick up a check and put it in a bank somewhere. I think that part may be a long-term consequence of this episode. I just also want to mention too that I think this epidemic could have been worse, and I think it's probably helpful that we had sort of and I say this cautiously, a sort of a mild epidemic. I read a book 20 years ago called The Hot Zone about Ebola and Marburg virus and some very, very awful viruses. And that book always stuck with me. And so this one came around and I said, well, you know, it's good that we got off easy this time and it's going to harden us for the next time and we'll be more prepared.
Thanks for that. Gurinder?
Yeah, it's interesting because of this, one of the huge impact that, you know, we don't realize have been on kids, right? The kids are generally very social. They want to be out there and, you know, being in schools and interacting with each other. And, you know, we as adults are, you know, less susceptible to the mental or the impact of not being able to see our colleagues compared to the kids that's seeing. So if there is a way for some company to come and take advantage of that disruption and providing that interaction, and schools have to evolve significantly, especially in the next 12 months. How do they manage, you know, kids getting back to school? What is that, you know, and especially around keeping track of kids' health and keeping track of their interaction, their behavior. So definitely there will be more companies who are already focusing on this and will continue to focus on this, and they'll come up with solutions in that area. You have seen already, you know, countries like South Korea who have been role model in keeping schools going, you know, and keeping the business economy going. So we have a lot to learn from that, especially on this side of the world. And that may be an outcome of all this, you know, how to adapt to this virus situation, because in the future, you might have another virus and our reaction may not be, or the impact may not be that bad because we'll learn how to adapt to that environment.
That's a great point. In fact, one of the questions coming out is just on the topic of the education, which I'll start in a moment. But thanks for that. Justin, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the positive outcomes for our company and this, we will have a little more remote working. It's just going to happen for the office workers, not the manufacturing employees. And as it mentioned earlier, the air quality issue has been, brought to the forefront, and that'll be a good thing, I think, for my industry.
Thank you. Well, so that leads to the end of our topics that we want to talk. One thing I can tell you, I am super charged now listening to all the positive views and the insights that you shared. So thank you for every single perspective that you shared here, to all four of you. We have a few minutes left. I want to probably start some of the questions that we are getting. Let's start the one that is related to the topic of the education. One of the things is, do you see the universities and colleges ever getting back to their old normal, i.e. same increase in price, their fees, same number of applicants or similar scale of applicants? What is your one advice, each of you, to people who have either graduated this year or about to graduate, or some of the prospective students who are probably on our call today or who will be listening to this presentation later? What's your advice in terms of point of view, how the education industry will operate going forward?
Just colleges or elementary schools too. My wife is a middle school math teacher.
Please, both of
signal processing.
Anything.
She and the whole math department at the school is trying to figure out how they're going to run classes going forward, and they've been using some videos which are very positive because it can help kids kind of learn at their own pace. But then they're realizing they still have to provide this sort of accountability function to make sure the kids actually watch the videos and do the questions at the end. So they're trying to figure out, disaggregating their job. Are we content creators? Are we accountability partners? Are we content deliverers? What exactly is our job, and how does that relate to we got to have a room full of kids that can't move anymore to go from room to room because they have to stay all in the same place together as a cohort, so we can do contact tracing. It's just a multi-dimensional problem. It's really complicated. And I think right now you're seeing all the schools all over the country, and I know the sort of elementary school, middle school best. Try to figure out what it is that they deliver and how are they going to do it going forward. And I think a lot of roles are about to change.
That sums it up. A lot of roles are about to change. Thank you for that. If anyone else has any perspective on this topic.
Yeah, definitely. So I sit on the educational foundation for the Los Altos school district. So we talk about this a lot. And I mean, they're trying to see how much, they're missing that social interaction right now. They're delivering content, but they're not getting as much of that social interaction. And how do you get that back with kids if they're going to be at home sometimes? Because right now they're talking about 8 different scenarios on how they go back to school in the fall. If they have, A and B programs that can't all fit in the classrooms based on the guidelines right now to be 6 feet apart, because class size would just be too small. They don't have, so they're trying to figure it out. And I think that's going to be making sure that the kids can get that social interaction at all levels, because that's what learning is. It is content, but it's also learning from your peers. And so that's going to be a fundamental thing that the education industry is going to have to figure out, how to get that interaction if we're distanced.
That's great. So in the interest of time, if no one has any additional perspective to add, the next question that I'm getting is, the reality is there were some job impacts that we heard even within the tech industry. Now, whether we call them as mobility or service companies, I don't want to name it, they were mentioned on this call already. And there could potentially be more job losses or unfortunate events where people are probably not able to go back to work for some time. What is that one single advice that this group wants to give to those kind of people in terms of planning, in terms of going about finding those jobs or getting back to the workforce?
So Ajay, I'll share a perspective, and it may sound too philosophical, but this is what my mentor at Booth told me. That when I joined Booth, he never searched for a job. He looked for what he wanted. Now, family situations, professional situations change, and maybe you have to have some kind of an income situation. But I'd say, assuming that we have mostly Booth people out here, and somehow they struggle with such a situation. I personally don't know any Booth person who's anywhere flipping a burger at McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with that, but still I don't know. So don't consider this as the end of the world. Stick in your lanes where you are. Keep yourself relevant, whether it's by writing about a topic, or the Bay Area is even a great place, just go help out startups. At least you stay engaged in there. That would be my one piece of advice versus calling it a doomsday and just randomly throwing out your resumes everywhere. The only thing it does is it just kind of makes you lose your credibility. Now, moving out of our little Booth bubble, if I may call it, we are privileged. I think we all know that. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Now, can we all blame it on COVID? COVID was, I would say, impetus, but some companies were already looking at doing their transformations. This gives them a good excuse. Some people want to really relook at their org designs and org structures. So some of them are using this as an opportunity to clean house, or whatever you might want to call it. But I'd say it's just a normal part of our business environment. And it's, again, going back to our fundamentals of economics, it's just going to stabilize over time. As the demand starts growing up, the demand for people will be there. If you keep your skills sharp, you'll be in demand.
Again, positivity, and that's going to stick to my work wall for a while, but look for what you want. That is an amazing advice. Thank you for that. Gurinder, any thoughts on this one?
I agree with what Bharat said, definitely. At the same time, I think there are opportunities being created in certain industry. As you have seen, there are companies who have increased their hiring because especially the infrastructure companies, there have been more load on them. And also you are going to see a lot of companies who are trying to evolve, and they're going to figure out how to hire the latest skill set because they need to evolve if they need to survive. So figuring out how to keep up with the advances in both the industry, the markets, the businesses, technology, all these areas, and keeping your skills relevant and reaching out to the right people. That's important. Having the network out there, and Booth is a great network, we all know, and reaching out to people, not just here, but all over. And Booth, we are always ready to help another student. And for people in general, I think this is, as we said earlier, this is a temporary. Definitely, the bigger impact are going to be on the blue collar markets. That's where the biggest impact has been. In the more the not just high tech, but the white collar industry, there's been a lesser impact, and maybe we'll see. I think that we are getting to the bottom of it. There's opportunities waiting for people. They just need to look out in the right direction and make sure they're ready for it.
Thank you for that perspective. That's a great perspective. Any last comments on this question?
I guess just in the short term too, there were some features of the CARES Act and some of the legislation that came through that can make it a little easier for folks. You can access your 401k plan and take a COVID-related distribution. Normally, I don't like to recommend taking money out of your 401k, but if you're unemployed for a period of time, that's an emergency, and take advantage of some of the new legislation. Also, I'm kind of a lemonade guy. When you've got lemons make lemonade. If this is a low income year for you, maybe look at doing a Roth IRA conversion. It's a good year to do that. So try to make the most positive thing you can happen out of a bad circumstance.
Thank you. We are over time here, and I am certainly enjoying this discussion so much that I can at least go on for a while now, but I want to be respectful of our panel's time. Before I go to my next slide, I actually want to thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for taking the time out today, coming together for the Booth community and sharing your perspective. It was such a diverse perspective. And with all the positivity and optimism that I heard on this call, and I'm sure all the attendees that they took on the message as well, this is so much refreshing and recharging to me. So thank you so much for your time. If I could just recap in the closing remarks, a couple of main points that I heard. At the end of the day, all of you said one thing, one way or the other, you mentioned that. It's about empathy, compassion. So it's people, people, people. Whether it's your own workforce, your customer stakeholders. You know, one of the important things, Bruce and Bharat, you mentioned, which is implicit, I'm sure Gurinder and Justin also had that, but it just didn't come out, is we at the end of the day have started to become better in our behavioral management skills right now, whether it's coping up with our peers, our friends, our families, or anyone else. And then the optimistic attitude that you have for the next 3, 6, 12 months, with those phenomenal disruptive potential areas that you mentioned, healthcare, education, tech, and just in general, talking about something new could come. I think this is an amazing panel that we have had in a long time. So thank you again. I just want to close off by showing what's coming next. So we don't stop here. As the alumni community, Gurinder, I'm going to borrow on what you just described. We are a very helpful and integrated community. We are super connected and engaged. So please do reach out. There is going to be more event series coming out. There are 2 events you can make note of already. The newsletter and the emails will be out very shortly on them. Second thing is, you know, stay connected and continue to provide your inputs to the community. We are only as strong as we are together as community. So make 1 + 1 = 3 here. Come together. We are always looking for people who have the desire to participate and contribute to the community because they're passionate about it. So either reach out to Leanne from the Alumni Relationship or myself, and just stay engaged with this. With that said, one more time, thank you, panel. It was lovely seeing all of you, many after so many years, and some after maybe a couple of weeks. So thanks for joining. Leanne, over to you.
Thank you guys so much. This was a fantastic webinar, and thank you, AJ, for a brilliant job of moderating. We hope to see you guys at the next one.
Thank you.
everyone.
Enjoy your time. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.